The Boy and the Heron, nightmare fuel and existential dread in the form of a colorful children's movie.
Mahito.
So, you made it.
Mother!
Have a seat.
Your favorite Eldritch Horror here, bringing you a review of another Miyazaki classic. We follow the story of a boy named Mahito. Born of tragedy, his adventure begins with the terrible loss of his mother, who was caught in a fire and couldn't be rescued. His father, a factory man who busies himself ceaselessly with work, sends Mahito off to the countryside to stay with his aunt, a woman who is a spitting image of his lost mother. She lives in a beautiful estate with a mysterious and magical aura. In addition to this, the estate includes half a dozen tiny old ladies. These little Japanese aunties are some of my favorite characters, and one in particular, a straight-backed pragmatist sort, will end up accompanying Mahito on his journey throughout the movie. Strange things immediately begin occurring. Run-ins with a gray heron which speaks to Mahito, saying things like "save me" and seemingly mocking the loss of his mother. The heron is aggressive and at times openly attacks Mahito, as well as declaring himself an enemy. And Mahito took that personally, first arming himself with a wooden sword, then upgrading to a knife, then finally a bow. He even makes his own arrow, one singular arrow with fletching taken from that very same heron. All the while, his aunt and old ladies don't see any of these things happening. They cannot hear the bird speak, they don't see the toads swarming Mahito's body, and they do not have any visions of fire and magic. Eventually, the journey leads Mahito to an abandoned Western-style looking building on the property, a huge mansion of sorts in terrible state of disrepair. The aunties warn him not to go in there, but he is a child and must advance the plot. The mansion was built and lived in by his grandfather, a reported genius who went insane and became a recluse. Mahito follows the heron into this building, and the mind-bending trip that is the creative touch of Miyazaki truly appears. We are dazzled by giant man-eating birds who have formed a society, led by a power-hungry king. We see doors that lead to different moments in time, and we are led to believe that the mansion itself is sentient to some degree. Mahito and the heron eventually team up and travel ever more deeply through the building, eventually falling into another dimension. This seems to be a dimension that exists before life. These adorable round blobs bounce and float around the world, representing spirits who will eventually ascend into the material plane and be born again as humans. Down in this before-life reality, Mahito is rescued by a woman who has clearly been living there a long time. Her home is an abandoned ship, and she takes it upon herself to feed certain entities who lack the ability to do so themselves. With the help of this woman, who Mahito later realizes is the younger version of that straight-backed granny, he escapes and finds his way back to the material world. The plot truly unfurls in the last 20 minutes. Edge-of-your-seat action, deep and meaningful character development, and existential decisions commenting on the meaning of life, the profundity of loss, and the morality of total control. Truly, Miyazaki once again puts to shame the most hallowed studios of the West like Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks. The thought-to-be-dead grandfather of Mahito turns out to be the architect of this magical realm, having found the heart of this living mansion as a young man. He witnessed it fall from the sky as a meteor. Then he had the facade of the mansion constructed around it to retain its secrecy. And as he sits alone in the highest chamber of the tower, he sits on a mountain of white blocks of all imaginable shapes and stacks them, explaining that the stack must be moved regularly without being knocked over. Good thing they don't have a skittish 6-foot-tall bird wielding a sword. Oh wait, no, they do. In his hunger for being the heir to the position of architect, the bird ruins the stack of blocks, undoing his entire reality. I love the complexity of the storyline. Following multiple avenues of characters we already know, but at different times in their life, is truly wonderful, and Miyazaki ties everything together flawlessly. You may at times have a degree of confusion, but it always feels intentional, and after all these years, I trust Miyazaki to not lead us astray or leave us with unsatisfied loose ends. I give The Boy and the Heron a 20 out of 21. 7 out of 7 sacrifice cultists. The aesthetics were exactly as you would predict from a Miyazaki movie, while the cinematography had brief aspects that felt unique to this film in particular. Perhaps new techniques, or perhaps just qualities I hadn't recognized in his other work. As always, he set new standards for creative expression, and once again proves to those of us with the ability to suspend our disbelief that animation allows for the purest form of storytelling. 6 out of 7 screams of the damned. Most of the movie revolved around Mahito and his journey of self-discovery and growth. The acting is brilliant as ever, as you would expect considering the characters were drawn, created from nothing to serve the role of that particular moment of time and space. The emotional impact felt delayed, as it took a good way through the movie before I began putting the pieces together of what this mysterious building truly was and its implications on the characters involved. 7 out of 7 Tentacles of Cthulhu. I was deeply engaged the entire film, and could easily have sat through another 30 minutes simply exploring side characters and features of the worlds within the building. As with all Ghibli movies, we are given a brief glimpse into a world so convincing that we are left to imagine endlessly the untold stories existing just off screen. The writing was excellent, tight and meaningful, no pointless dialogue, something that I as a writer truly admire. I have been a fan of Ghibli movies since I was young, and have only ever grown more fond of them. This is an instant classic to be ranked among the best of Miyazaki's works, such as Howl's Moving Castle or Nausicaa: Valley of the Wind. I give this my highest recommendation. Go see it immediately. That's all for today, mortals.